I found myself in the Pacific Northwest today. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and Eugene, Oregon is in Lane County. So this is the Lane County Historical Museum. And I did a whole series about the Oregon Trail, and I thought maybe there might be some stuff in here and some other local history to check out. So let's go check out this museum, and then maybe we'll go try to find another one after this. First thing I noticed when I walked in is that it's much bigger than it looks from the outside. So they've done a nice job of really opening up that space and starting with, just general history of Lane County here. And the stage stops and the trails were so important for the development of the area, obviously. So there's a lot of written history there. There's an old staircase, the original staircase to the courthouse from the late 1800s. And they even encourage you to take a seat. There's also the original bell from the courthouse. There's a wagon from the Oregon Trail, or I should call it a schooner. And imagine being there for months trying to head west. And obviously that's where they talk about the migration and the Oregon Trail and different trails and different wagon trains that went west towards Oregon. They had a lost wagon train of 1853 that's coming up. And then just how people settled. So very informative. There's plenty to read. If you got an entire day, you could probably read everything, but it'd be hard to read everything in just an hour or so, because they do a great job of documenting. It's very well organized and very well written. And so nice piece of artwork there of the lost wagon train. Obviously logging is a big part of Oregon history, so they have a whole part of that here in relation to Lane County. Each museum I ever go to, has different ways of talking about the local towns, and they did a nice job here too with different written histories, and then kind of showing like the inside of a home or the local area. They have the Oregon Trail game, which I haven't played that in a long time. And, as I got started, I go, okay, yeah, here's the Kansas River. But I did not do very well. So we're breezing through here. They certainly go to University of Oregon because that's where University of Oregon is, in Eugene and Lane County. I love that picture of the old football field in the game. Rivers and water transportation is very important, and so there's a drift boat. They talk about the history, and they just have some cool old automobiles and different forms of transportation in this area. This hearse, it's pretty funny. They got the skeleton there, but then the hearse is actually really cool when you check it out. So it's really interesting part of history. The Oregon Trail pageant was something I never heard of that they did for over 30 years, or almost 30 years. Lots of information about that too. I always enjoy going to the local museums, getting some, little tidbits from the people that work here. It's very quiet, not very busy. I was the only one in there today. And, but yeah, so that was cool. Learned a lot of history. I love the Oregon Trail stuff. I can't get enough of that. So I'm here for a track meet. It's actually why I'm here, because I'm a track coach. And so let's head over to where they have the big track meets and see what we can find over there. Hayward Hall is attached to Hayward Field, which is the track and field stadium at the University of Oregon, where they host huge competitions like the Olympic trials. They've had the World Championships. They've had lots of different major competitions. The Prefontaine Classic is a huge meet every year. And I was here coaching for Wichita State for a meet for the Oregon Invitational that weekend. So thought I'd pop in. It's sometimes open during the meets, but usually it's just kind of open during the week. You can see the stadium there as you kind of walk into the entrance. Oregon Track and Field has a long history of success, not just because their stadium is really nice, but they've won lots and lots of national championships. The stadium opened in 2021. It replaced an older stadium that had been there forever. I'd been there for probably a dozen different meets throughout the years, and it's kind of a historic place. But the new stadium was built to help host larger championships, and it could seat more. Some people prefer the old stadium, but the new stadium is certainly very nice, and this attachment with the Hayward Hall is a nice touch. So these are just some of the head coaches they're showing, and all the different head coaches throughout the history of their program.
And carry on his legacy. When a duck ran the first sub-4 on American soil, a whole flock followed. Another came back from Rome with 2 goals in his luggage. The Ducks finished in the top 10 16 times and won 4 national championships.
Steve Prefontaine, one of the most famous athletes, I did a video about him and his untimely death in a car accident. As you can see, though, it's just a really nice museum. They put a lot of effort in the aesthetics to this museum. Obviously, there's a ton of information too, but it just looks great. The Stop Pre t-shirt is kind of a famous shirt that he put on. As one of his competitors' fans had that shirt. And Prefontaine, there's him on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Next room is really interesting because this is basically where Nike was started. When the head coach, Bill Bowerman, and Phil Knight, who was one of the athletes, created Nike, and Bowerman made the shoes for Oregon track and field athletes. And this is a cool room because it shows all the tools that he used, how he put them together. He made them for each athlete individually. And it's a really remarkable story if you think of what Nike is today, that this is how things got started.
Nails through the foot would be too many. I think probably 3 would be enough, but I've never been able to find an athlete that would go for it. It was crazy.
And in this next beautiful room is kind of more information about the relationship between Nike and the University of Oregon and Oregon Track and Field. There's a picture of the stadium there. And the early days and some of the early shoes, and that's Phil Knight right there. So he's now the guy in charge of Nike. Was on the track team here, and then it's basically a museum for Nike shoes, besides being a Oregon Track and Field museum. So the evolution of the shoes, and then Nike's become so much more. Prefontaine was the first sponsored athlete. So you think of all the athletes, Michael Jordan and Bo Jackson and all those different people. The Oregon Track and Field athlete was the very first ever sponsored athlete for Nike. That's pretty much the end of the museum. More trophies, another shot of Bill Bowerman. Really fun town to visit, Eugene, Oregon. And if you go, you might as well check out some of these free museums. Here at the Lane County History Museum, Saturday morning, it's not too busy. The only car here.